How a virus infects a host. So let's say someone sneezes. So when they sneeze, they typically release saliva and mucus particles that tend to be relatively harmless, unless that person's sick. Then in that case, these particles contain lots of viruses that are ready to infect a new host. Now, if this individual who sneezed was around other people or in public, the little particles that he spilled out of his mouth during the sneeze that are enriched with virus would end up floating to another individual. When these particles go onto another person, they're normally taken through the sinus cavity by breathing them in or putting their hands in their mouth or something along those lines. This gives the virus an opportunity to infect you, and it does this by drifting down and landing onto a cell. Fortunately, the virus is unable to actually infect or do any harm to you unless it can gain entry to the cell and reproduce. But cells have walls around them that protect random particles from floating in and doing harm to them. So the cell's encased with things that are known as receptors, and what these do is they notify the cell if there's a protein or something beneficial to it on the surface. And the virus is encased in these proteins that act as keys to gain entrance to the cell, which has locks around it. Now, if the virus has the right protein shell around it, the cell will actually open up and it will bring the virus in, and it actually gives it directions to go down to the nucleus. Now, upon landing near the nucleus, this outer shell that has brought this virus down to the nucleus will release, and the virus will float up to the nucleus, and it will actually rip open and it will release its RNA particles to the nucleus. Now, once these RNA pieces have entered the nucleus, what they're going to do is they're going to follow in the place of the cell's DNA. And when this does this, it's going to hook into the genetics of the cell and start printing copies of itself instead of the cell's DNA. So what it's going to do is order the cell to start reproducing more copies of the virus instead of more cells. Now, the freshly made viruses will go out of the cell and try to infect more cells. And the reason these viruses don't just rampage through the body and wipe us out is because we have over 30 trillion cells on average. Also, you have your immune system, and which is these little cells that go around and eat up all these viruses. Now, when all this virus residue and stuff builds up, you will sneeze, cough, hack, spit up, whatever you have to do to get it out. And this is how the virus is transferred to a new host, yet again. So in conclusion, this is the process that a virus takes to infect a host, and hopefully you've learned something about how a virus goes about this process.